Imagine, dead of night on the steppe. The only sound is the rapidly increasing thunder of hooves. A rider bursts into the circle of light from a station campfire. He does not dismount. He physically cannot. His body is strapped to the saddle with leather belts. His face is weathered into a leather mask. His eyes are bloodshot from days of relentless strain. He wheezes only one word, Paiza. 30 seconds later, having switched to a fresh mount, this human projectile disappears into the darkness. In the 13th century, this looked like black magic, a man covering 300 kilometers in a single day. But this is not magic. This is the YAM, the most advanced information technology of the Middle Ages. While the rest of the world lived at the pace of slow foot caravans and news between European capitals took months to travel, the Mongol Empire operated in real time. The primary enemy of any superpower of the past was not a foreign army, but signal latency. Distance was the physical limit of power. An order sent from Karakoram could become obsolete before the messenger even crossed the first desert. Genghis Khan and his successors hacked this problem. They created the nervous system of the empire, a network that stitched the continent together from the Pacific Ocean to Hungary. This was not merely a postal service for delivering the Khan's letters. It was a rigid military infrastructure that transformed the chaos of vast spaces into a manageable environment. Data transmission speed became just as deadly a weapon as the composite bow or the siege engine. While a European king was just receiving news of Mongol scouts appearing on the border, the Khan's headquarters were already reading a detailed report on the strength of his garrisons. If the messenger is the signal, then the YAM station is the server node. The mechanics of the system relied on flawless resource logistics. At each such node, scattered across all of Eurasia, up to 400 specially trained horses were constantly maintained. These were not random mounts. This was a strategic reserve that could not be used for army needs or general labor. It was for communication only. The architecture of the station was subordinated to a single goal, minimizing downtime. It was a medieval pit stop. Entire teams of grooms, blacksmiths, and guards worked here, ensuring the node remained operational 24/7. However, to prevent this machine from being overwhelmed by chaos, an access protocol was required. This protocol was the Paiza, a metal plaque with the Khan's seal. Depending on the messenger's status and the importance of the information, Paizas were made of gold, silver, or wood. A gold Paiza featuring a gerfalcon granted the bearer priority traffic status. This meant the right to the fastest horse, immediate replacement, and death to anyone who stood in their way. The Paiza was the digital certificate of its time. It verified the messenger's authenticity and provided unlimited access to the empire's resources. The price of this efficiency was colossal. The YAM system was the most expensive infrastructure project in nomadic history. Maintaining the stations placed a heavy burden on the local population. It was a communication tax. Every village within the node's radius was obligated to supply oats, meat, and labor. For the slightest failure in the station's operation, if a horse was not ready or the forage was rotten, the execution of those responsible followed immediately. The gritty realism of Mongol communication lay in the fact that it operated not on enthusiasm, but on fear and mathematical precision. A single station master's mistake could result in a reinforcement order arriving late, leading to the destruction of an army on the other side of the world. Therefore, each node was an autonomous fortress with the strictest internal regulations. The blood in the veins of this nervous system was pumped by the engine of total discipline. While European feudal lords squabbled over the borders of their lands, Mongol riders pierced through these borders using an infrastructure that functioned like a single, perfectly tuned clockwork mechanism.
The YAM system was not a one-way street.
While the Khan's orders flowed from the center to the periphery, a continuous stream of raw data flowed in the opposite direction. The Mongol Empire transformed Eurasia into a gargantuan sensor network. Every YAM rider, every merchant carrying a Paiza, and every diplomat acted as sensors, gathering intelligence on road conditions, river water levels, urban morale, and even grain prices. What is the mechanics of war here? The Mongols were the first to realize that victory begins years before the first shot is fired. Information arriving through the YAM converged at the mobile headquarters, the Orda, which functioned as a central processing unit. Here, the data was systematized. While European chroniclers were busy recording eclipses and omens, Mongol staff officers were drafting detailed maps of future theaters of operation. They knew the load-bearing capacity of bridges in Hungary and the number of wells in the Khwarezmian desert before the first Tumen even crossed the border. But gathering data is only half the task. The second half is filtering out the noise. The YAM allowed for the cross-referencing of information from various sources. If a merchant reported a rebellion while the official messenger remained silent, the system triggered a verification process. Priority was given to operational intelligence reports, Bartoks, who utilized the YAM infrastructure to deliver reports on enemy army movements with maximum speed. This provided the Mongol command with tempo superiority. When an opponent executed a maneuver, Subutai or Genghis Khan knew about it within hours, not days. The gritty realism lay in how the Mongols stripped war of its element of uncertainty, the so-called fog of war. They turned reconnaissance into an industrial process. Using the YAM system to integrate espionage and logistics meant that the Mongol army always fought on a revealed map, while their enemies moved blindly. This was the mechanics of total transparency. The empire viewed the world not as a collection of countries, but as a set of resources and obstacles to be processed efficiently. While knights relied on valor, the Mongols relied on the accuracy of their databases. The central secret behind Mongol victories lay not in numbers, but in synchronization. Before the YAM system, conducting war across vast distances was a lottery. If two of your armies were separated by mountains or hundreds of kilometers of steppe, they were effectively fighting in different realities. But Mongol mechanics transformed these scattered elements into a single organism. This is what modern military theory calls network-centric warfare. During the Western campaign of 1241, Mongol corps moved across Europe in a wide fan. The gap between the northern wing in Poland and the southern wing in Transylvania spanned hundreds of kilometers. In the context of the 13th century, this was suicidal. An opponent could have defeated them in detail. However, the YAM provided continuous horizontal data exchange. Corps commanders knew their neighbor's position almost in real time. If one corps slowed down due to a siege, the others adjusted their tempo. This was a precision calibration of force vectors. Synchronization via the YAM allowed for the execution of hammer and anvil tactics on a continental scale. While one army feigned a threat in one region, drawing all enemy forces toward it, another, hundreds of kilometers away, received a signal through YAM messengers and delivered a decisive strike into the vacuum. The enemy simply could not comprehend how the Mongols managed to act in such perfect concert without seeing one another. They felt as though they were being manipulated by some invisible hive mind. And that mind was the command transmission system. The gritty realism here is that the YAM eliminated freelancing and feudal spontaneity. In the Mongol army, there was no room for chivalric impulse or personal glory at the expense of the plan. If a messenger brought an order to wait, the army waited, even if victory seemed easy. If the order was to retreat, they withdrew, luring the enemy into a trap prepared by another corps 3 days' march away. The YAM system turned war from a collection of heroic episodes into a mathematical equation, where time was the primary multiplier. Without this neural network, Mongol expansion would have stalled 1,000 kilometers from Karakoram, collapsing into dozens of unmanageable conflicts. But thanks to the YAM, the Great Khan's will remained firm and relevant at any point within reach of a horse's hoof. When Marco Polo witnessed the YAM system at the end of the 13th century, he was more shocked by it than by the wealth of palaces. He described it as something beyond human capability. To a European accustomed to chaos and trackless wilderness, the Mongol network of stations seemed like alien technology. But herein lies the primary lesson of imperial mechanics. A territory can be conquered with the sword, but it can only be held through connectivity. The YAM system outlived the unified Mongol Empire. Its efficiency was so undeniable that all subsequent Eurasian states, from the Golden Horde and the Timurid Empire to the Tsardom of Muscovy, used Mongol blueprints to build their own postal and logistical systems. The Russian word for coachman, yamshik, is a direct echo of the Khan's great network. The Mongols created history's first data transmission standard that functioned regardless of who sat on the throne. It was the foundation of the Pax Mongolica, a period when a merchant could travel from Beijing to Crimea with a gold platter on his head without fearing for his life. The YAM guaranteed security and speed, transforming Eurasia into a single economic space. However, this efficiency had a dark side. The YAM was an exceedingly expensive and complex mechanism. As soon as central authority began to weaken and communication nodes started to degrade, the empire disintegrated instantly. Without its nervous system, massive tumans turned into isolated warbands and governors into petty lords. The collapse of the Mongol Empire was, above all, a collapse of its communications. When the ping between the capital and the provinces grew from days to months, the empire's operating system triggered a critical error. The legacy of the YAM surrounds us even today. The routes of Mongol messengers became the basis for the Great Silk Road and later for the Trans-Siberian Railway and modern fiber optic lines. The Mongols were the first to prove that information is the most valuable resource in war. They didn't just create a postal service, they created the concept of global governance. In the world of war mechanics, the YAM system is a symbol that any force is useless without control. You can have the world's best cavalry, but if you cannot issue an order in time, you have already lost. The speed of thought must outpace the speed of the strike. In this, Subutai, Genghis Khan, and their nameless messengers were absolute masters. Communication protocol closed. System entering standby mode.